Well, today is the first Sunday of Advent, and before I share this word this morning, I just wanted to say to you guys that I'm grateful to be a part of a community of compassion. Whether that's the compassion I see you having for each other in the midst of struggles, just as many of you have recently shown much compassion to Linda and I in some of the things that are happening in our extended family. There's some of the sad things going on for us, or the compassion of people cooking Thanksgiving meals for other people, which I've seen, or of people buying gifts or gift cards for families who are in need. I just want to thank you for letting compassion live in you, because I don't think we should take that for granted. We all look around the world every day and we think, it would probably be good if there was more compassion. So when I see it alive here, I'm really grateful for it. So I've dubbed our Advent series for these few weeks, "The Weary World Rejoices," which you probably recognize as a line from a Christmas hymn. I think that theme resonated with me because of all my Christmases as a Christian. This one is drawing near amid what feels like a greater sense of weariness for a lot of people. I am very aware of it. And that weariness could be things unfolding in your own life. I have some of that right now. It also could be the weariness of watching a world at war where innocent people are dying every day, or the weariness of injustices that you see unfolding around you, or the weariness of disingenuous leaders in the culture and the church, or just the weariness of the vitriolic division that seems to permeate everything these days. So the cause might be this or it might be that, but I think it feels like kind of exhausting times for a lot of people. We were with extended family on Thanksgiving, Linda's side of the family, and it was a wonderful day. And the family member hosting Thanksgiving sent us all a note in advance asking if we could please not talk about politics when we were all together for Thanksgiving. And honestly, I wasn't sure how I felt about that at first. Don't feel, think bad of me for that. But I feel like there are so many things that we need to talk about and think about, especially as Christian people these days. But I have to say that a day of just family connection and joy and laughter was like medicine for my soul, because it's a wearying season. So it was almost nice to just put all that outside the door on Thanksgiving and say, let's just tell family stories and love each other and eat way more than we should and all of that. And I think it felt like medicine for my soul because it is a wearying season. And then along comes Advent and Christmas, right, into this season. Christmas is like this magical season of kindness and twinkling lights and festive gatherings. And it often ignites, somehow bleeds over into kind of a sense of wonder in our faith as we contemplate the birth of Christ in Bethlehem, and it lifts our spirits with its message of hope, and it makes us feel warm when the weather's turning cold, and it brings us this sense of light when the days are getting dark and short. But what happened to me this year is I was thinking, because this is what we preachers do. We go like, what am I going to preach for Christmas, right? And the question in my soul, the thing in my soul, was like weariness meets Christmas, and what do I do with that? And for me, a question arose out of that, and I gave my sermon this morning the title that is that question, which is, do I still believe the light shines in the darkness? It's a question that I can feel in my soul. Because you see, the longer I walk this spiritual journey, the less I really like a faith that can't ask hard questions. I need a faith that can stand in the real world, that can look hard circumstances or human cruelty or selfishness or injustice right in the face and still come away with hope. Of all the New Testament writers, it's John who is most captivated with this imagery of light and darkness. If you've ever read the Gospel of John or 1 John, I'll read to you from the Gospel of John, chapter 1 in a moment, but in 1 John, John is all about walking in the light versus the darkness, and how do you know if you're walking in the light? And he says things like, the one who hates his brother might think he's walking in the light, but guess what? He's not walking in the light, right? So in John chapter 1, this is what John says about Christ coming into the world. He says, the light is shining in the darkness, and the darkness has not comprehended it. And in the verse right before that, speaking of Jesus coming into the world, he says this about Jesus. He says, in him was life, and that life was the light of human beings. And so I wonder, if Jesus came as the bearer of the light to all of us human beings, what does it mean for the light to shine in my life, in my relationships, in the world? I think if we asked Christian people, do you believe in the light of God? The yes answers would be 100%. Everybody who thinks of themselves as a Christian would say, if you say, do you believe in the light of God? Oh, absolutely, I believe in the light of God. But I think it's worth asking what we think the light is. What is the light of God that comes into the world? What do we perceive this light so powerful that John says it can overcome the darkness? I mean, think of Jesus saying, do not be afraid. I have overcome the world. Really? That's huge. So what do we think that this powerful light, in fact, is? When we think of darkness in spiritual terms, we usually think first of evil, and that's not a wrong intuition. We might also think of the darkness of the difficult things that befall us personally in life, right? And you may be going through some of those right now, or have gone through some this year, or Linda and I are certainly walking through some of that in circumstances of our family. And so we might say that's a kind of darkness too, and it is. But the New Testament writers, well, Jesus, not a writer, but Jesus, the Apostle Paul, John, they all are very explicit in applying this imagery of light and darkness specifically to evil. In fact, this same John who wrote the Gospel of John tells us later on in his first little letter that the whole world has been enchanted under the spell of evil. It's a big statement. That this thing, it's permeated somehow. We've gotten sucked into some kind of thinking that generates these places where we don't see each other right and where we harm each other as human beings. And he says everybody's become enchanted by this. It's like a spell over the world. From our personal relationships to ethnic tensions to the aggression of nations, all we have to do is look around us and we can see. Don't we look around? I look around sometimes and I just think, human beings are funny. In Western civilization, we go back and forth between these periods where we say, everything's really getting better societally, and I think everything's going to keep getting better, right? And then the wheels come off the bus, and we go, what the heck is going on? And I have these moments where I just think, really, after all this time, I look around at what we're doing to each other as human beings, I think, we're still not better than this? Are we still not? We're kind of expecting something to emerge, everybody to emerge. So we see it. We see it all around us. We see the spell that seems to be over human beings. And I want to talk about a couple really hard examples of that I see out in the world this morning. I'll get to us, but I want to talk about a couple examples. And the reason I do is because, the reason I'm going to do this, because you might think it's political or it's too direct or it's whatever, but the reason I do is because there is a temptation for us to associate the light of God with just the personal ways that our own lives have become enlightened by coming into this relationship with Christ. Like maybe we have joy because of our relationship with Christ. Maybe Christ has changed some really good things in our lives, which he has in mind. And so we look at all those things and we say, this is the light of God, like how it has affected me, what it has done for me. But Jesus and our early Christian apostles, they want us to see aspects of the light even bigger than that. So as an example, they want us to see aspects of the light that have to do with evil and darkness. I know that's... Consider the injustice to Palestinians and their cruel displacement from the land that was once theirs. As people around the world are gearing up to celebrate the birth of the Savior in Bethlehem and to sing songs about Bethlehem, as we heard this morning, here's the latest news from sources on the ground in Bethlehem. Current circumstances in Bethlehem are defined by a severe economic crisis and rising violence. This is the Bethlehem we sing about, same city as in days of old. Tourist sites are largely empty and streets are often described as ghost towns. The vast majority of hotels have closed, and many shops and restaurants have shuttered. For the second year in a row, Christmas celebrations in Bethlehem have been canceled as a sign of solidarity with the victims of the conflict. Escalating violence from Israeli settlers is a major concern in the occupied West Bank, including areas near Bethlehem. Recent reports include arson attacks on homes and vehicles, physical assaults, and harassment of Palestinian farmers. New illegal Israeli outposts continue to be established in the Bethlehem area alongside Israeli government plans to seize additional land. Israeli settlers continue to illegally seize Palestinian homes. Israeli military forces frequently conduct raids and demolition operations in the Bethlehem area and have installed new gates and tightened control at checkpoints, further isolating the city and its surrounding villages. Amid all our, what I love, beautiful Christmas card images of Bethlehem, that's Bethlehem right now at the hands of those caught in the enchantment of evil. You know, when we think of light, we consider that light is what makes it possible to see, like when you're in a dark room and someone flips on the light, or you're in a dark room and someone turns on the flashlight, or you're outside in the dark and someone lights a fire and all of a sudden you can see. And one of the things that light makes possible is it makes it possible for us to see the truth about things, about anything. And we even use that kind of phrasing when we talk about, we'll use this phrase about bringing something to light when we talk about the truth. Like when the truth comes out, we say, oh, it was brought to light, right? But we live in a moment where truth is getting harder and harder to distinguish. And it's almost disorienting. Like, what is true? What is the light? And what is of the light and what is of the darkness? And part of that is just the confusion of the internet and social media being the Wild West, no doubt about it, right? It used to be, back in my day, that we just turned on Walter Cronkite and he told us what was going on in the world on one of the 3 stations that our television got, you know? And there was no computer in your hand. But it's disorienting, and I want to give you an example. And I just give it, not trying to be political this side, that side, just give it an example that things pass for light that aren't. Is that fair to say in this world? That things pass for light sometimes that aren't. And lots of people receive them as light and receive them as good. So last week, one of the most visible people in our government at a Christian gathering championed a twisted version of ethnic histories, the ethnic histories of the land that we live in, saying that when Europeans came to North America, they found its indigenous people embroiled, rife with acts of child sacrifice. And that these people were saved from their backward, talking about Native Americans, indigenous people, these people were saved from their backward and cruel ways by this incursion of Christian civilization. This was at a Christian gathering. The truth is, there's very little evidence that child sacrifice existed among the indigenous people of the Americas, and there is literally zero evidence that child sacrifice existed among the indigenous people of North America, the place that we live. The truth is that our European ancestors stole their land, lied to them over and over, and slaughtered them to the point that some tribes ceased to exist completely. We have a word for that. It starts with a G. What this Christian person, a person who wears and bears the name of Christ, said at this gathering was an untruth to reinforce the idea of the historic superiority of white Europeans and their civilization over the indigenous peoples of the land that we live in today. White America is still, and that's darkness. It just is. And white America is still afraid to let the light fully shine on our past treatment of non-white people, which is so, I get it that we're afraid. But you know, the thing that takes us into the better and more beautiful future is the light shining into all the dark corners. I know some of us bristle at this because we don't want to be made to feel guilty for those historic things, and I'm not asking anyone to feel guilty. If you think that's why I would say something like this, it's not. The first two Lehmans in my family line, right? That's my last name. The first two Lehmans in my family line were two brothers who came to America and settled in the Massachusetts Bay Colony 2 years before the men of that colony slaughtered the Pequot Indian tribe. The Pequot Indian tribe no longer exists. There's a very good chance, almost 100%, because of the age that these two ancestors of mine were, that they participated in that slaughter. I don't feel guilty for what they did. I did not do it. But I also know that its horror must be fully acknowledged so that future cruelties will be seen for what they are. You brush it under the rug, you brush it under the rug, you brush it under the rug. That doesn't work. So do not pass go, do not collect $200. Don't downplay it. Don't say it wasn't that bad. And yet that's what we see people around us in our culture doing with lots of things, saying it wasn't that bad. So I don't feel guilty, but I feel sad. And what I need to feel when I am willing to let the light shine on our human injustice and cruelty, what I need to feel is awakened. That's what I need to feel. When religious people don't become conscious enough to see all human beings in their dignity and to distinguish goodness from evil, we become like the Pharisees. We become religious like the Pharisees were. And you know what Jesus said to them? It's a great little metaphor. He said, you strain at gnats, because they would literally strain things out. You might have gnats in the juice, or in the milk, you got to strain it out. He said, you're straining out the gnats and you're swallowing camels. Right? In another place, he says, you tithed off the herbs in your garden, your mint and your cumin. Right? Do you have any herbs at your house? Well, no problem. No problem then. But he says, you tithed off the herbs in your garden and you ignored justice and the love of God. So, and yet it's not our enemy whose heart, whose ability to see, we need to be most concerned with. Let me read to you a little from Brother Richard Rohr. He says in The Tears of Things, amazing book, it's common for us to think of evil as an interruption of an otherwise smooth functioning order usually caused by someone else. In other words, what we want to think evil is occasionally, for some reason, some really bad people pop up and do some really bad stuff. And that's where we see the evil, and they're usually the people on the other side of us that we don't like anyway, and so that's how we look at evil. Then he says this, but evil and death are part of the deal, mixed in with all of life, part of the common domain, the domain common to all of us, shadowing all our best efforts and intentions. There's a verse in Romans 7, nobody translates this thing Paul says, the Apostle Paul says, into English from the Greek the way it is, because what he literally says is, even when I'm trying to do right, if you know that passage where he's talking about like he's trying to do right, but he still sometimes does the wrong thing, he says, even when I'm trying to do right, evil is trying to slip into bed with me. That's what he says. With me, with you, with all of us, not just the people we disdain because they're doing the terrible things that we abhor. Everything those I imagine to be my enemies do in the right circumstances or without being sufficiently awake or aware, I am capable of. That's ground zero right there. Am I angry when I hear lies that feed injustice, when I see cruelty? Yes. But first I'm sad. And I'm sad for all of us. And this is the meaning of Jesus' words that blessed are those who mourn. That's step one to see the world as it is. Not to just say, those people are doing bad things. I'm going to vilify them. I'm going to be angry with them. See, I'm the good person on the good side, and they're the bad people. We got to mourn together, all of us, because of the way that evil can come to any of us. You know, the light of God as it exposes, and I hope you're catching what I'm trying to say this morning. If we think the light of God is just and these do exist, the happier conceptions we have of the light of God, right? That make us feel warm and make us feel like, you know, everything is great and everything's going to be okay and we're loved and isn't it good? Like I love all of that and I believe in all of that. But if we think that that is all the light of God is, the New Testament writers and Jesus, they're far more obsessed with the light and darkness imagery actually as it relates to evil. So I'm fascinated with this, the light of God, you know, as it exposes evil, because on the one hand, the light of God is adamant and resolute in calling our selfishness, injustice, cruelty, hypocrisy, just as it is. I mean, if the light shines in, you're going to see everything in the room. Oops, right? But God's response to our darkness is not to destroy us perpetrators, but to weep and to love. The Catholic theologian Peter Kreeft wrote that on the cross, Jesus is the tears of God. God weeps, and he gives himself to us, and he forgives us even as he exposes the darkness. And you know what God's doing in all this? As we come into this shared sadness of our common humanity, what we discover is this solidarity with all people. Andrew DeCourt writes about this also in Blessed Are the Others. We come into this solidarity with everyone who has experienced pain, with everyone who has been wounded, with everyone who has experienced injustice, with everyone in all the sadnesses that have befallen them. It's like the first step of the restoration of humanity is let's all be sad together for what it has been. But see, if I am sad for you, and you are sad for me, and we are sad for our neighbor, and we are sad for the people who are very different from us, now we see our sameness. And we can say, and what now? And where do we go from here? This is what is at the heart of Jesus saying that when we did it to the least of these, his brethren, we did it to him. I am the immigrant fleeing violence or trying to feed my family. I am the displaced Ukrainian. I am the Israeli mother who lost her son, and I am the Palestinian father whose home was just stolen from him at the point of a gun. I am the black person. I am the brown person. I am the red person. The early Christians got this. Like, man, do you ever have those things, if you've been on this Christian journey for a while, do you ever have those things that you think like, you've journeyed for quite a while and then you see something and you say, man, I can't believe like it took this long for me to see it. I have a lot of those, you know. The early Christians, though, they got this thing about we are each other. Jesus says, I am that struggling person. When you did it to them or you didn't do it to them, that's me. We are each other. And they understood this. And so like Paul uses this phrase that you have, you know, here's what it is. You're never going to really know the depth and beauty of the Christian faith, the wonder of it, until you start to wonder about human beings, right? Like I say these days, we were in churches for decades where I never heard the word human being, or humanity ever in a sermon. Ever. It's talking about Jesus and getting saved and all good stuff, but somehow it never got down to that place where it's like, what does it mean for human beings? What does it do for human beings? So Paul, right, Johnny come lately to the faith, right? He's out killing Christians and getting them jailed, and he encounters Jesus, and he has this transforming experience, and it turns everything he thought about God on its head. And then over the years, as he ponders Jesus, eventually he comes up with this phrase. He calls Jesus the new human being. You might know it in a more traditional translation as the new man. But it's the human being. The new human being. Jesus is the new human being who is all human beings. Of every color, of every land, of every economic class, the people you like, the people you don't like, the people you don't understand. He is every human being. He is the new human being. And I talk so extensively about this morning on this first Sunday of Advent because what we have been told is the light, right? We hear about the light of God, and that it's been radiantly manifest in this new human being who slipped unpretentiously into the world. But that begs this question of what then is that light? What is it? What is it? If Jesus is the bearer of the light of God, if we come and we gaze into this manger where the new human being who is redefining everything exists, what is that? And I'm going to answer that question in what might sound like a very strong way, but I told you that I want to know in my own soul, forget sermons and preachers. Fran Lehman wants to know in his soul if I can still believe that the light shines in the darkness in a way that gives me the overcoming hope that my early Christian brothers and sisters speak of so strongly. So here's what I think. I think if the light is about my personal prosperity and all the pieces of this that make me happy, if it's just about that, or if it puts God on my side in such a way that I can disdain those I consider hellbound or not in the right group or not in my religion, or if I think I can make Jesus a part of my nationalism, whether I'm American or something else. I think I can make Jesus a part of my nationalism with the various superiorities that I attach to that, then honestly, that's not a light that can give me existential hope. Because it's not light. You know what it is? Jesus told the Pharisees this. It's the same stuff human beings are already doing to each other, just with God's name put on it, as like an extra, I don't know, it's an extra way to sell it. But it's all the same ways that human beings are already harming each other and treating each other. But if this radiant light is the goodness that exposes all the selfishness and mess and hypocrisy and injustice for exactly what they are, and is also unendingly patient and self-sacrificial love by which God does not make an enemy of me, which is what I might expect, but rather invites me into the truth, even invites me into the sadness of the truth, invites me through that portal, into the reality of our sameness as human beings, invites me into the possibility of coming awake. This is a light big enough to create new human hearts, new human trajectories, new reconciliations between people, new human community. The first way of thinking about Christ, that it's about what I get out of it, or puts me in this superior place related to some other groups of human beings, or that I attach it to, my country and however that plays into all those things. That first way of thinking about Christ, it leaves us exactly where we already were. It makes me think of Jesus' words. This is like, maybe if Jesus ever said something that was terrifying, this is it. He says these words. He says, if what you think is the light inside you is really darkness, then how deep is that double darkness? Right? If you put God's name on stuff, on ways you think you see and feel, and you say, that's the light, but it's actually of the darkness, Jesus said, you're doubly in the dark. But the real light illuminates this darkness that is part of our sameness, and then it reveals itself to us as utterly forgiving and transforming love. And for me, that's where the portal to escape the darkness comes in. Kind of painful, because it isn't, I am concerned about things you guys know that, I'm concerned about things I see in the world around us today. But that isn't the darkness I have to be most concerned with. Darkness I have to be most concerned with is here, am I under the enchantment of things that are dark? And so it's painful to say, God, shine it into all my own dark corners and all the places I've believed the wrong things and promoted the wrong things and looked at things and people in the wrong ways. Shine it into all my dark corners. And then God does that, and it's painful, and I feel like I've been having that experience for like 40 years in my life, where God is like, I love this thing Soren Kierkegaard said. Kierkegaard said, just about the time you think you really got it all kind of, good place with God, God comes along and he kind of goes, hey, look under there. And you're like, oh, there's more, right? But once that happens, and this same God doesn't come to you to burn you down, but comes to you laying in a manger as utter goodness. As if think of this, as if even in your state, he would let you hold him in your arms. Oh my God. Now I'm wrecked by goodness and love, which is exactly where I need to be. So maybe this was too heavy a sermon for the first Sunday of Advent. But I just didn't want us to come into this Christmas because of the time we're in. I just didn't want us to come into this Christmas and use our images of Christmas that come from our greeting cards and our beautiful little Bethlehem depictions and our songs that we sing, to use that as sort of an escapism from the other thing the light is supposed to do, which is to expose the darkness within us and around us. And I know I haven't talked much this morning about what the light means in terms of just the dark clouds of trouble that come to our lives. But understand that if this light, this love of God, will not give up on us when we have come under the spell of the darkness, then it also will not let us go in any of our troubles. Ever, ever, ever. How does it go? Never will I leave you. Never will I forsake you. So maybe like Linda and I, some troubles and sadnesses have found you this year. They found us. God knows. And maybe not us as a couple. Don't think something like that. When you're a pastor and you say things like that, people go, are they okay? We'll tell you if we're not. And maybe like me, you don't see a way around some of those dark clouds, some of those dark circumstances. The couple of things that we're really grappling with in life, there's no shortcuts around them. We're going to walk through them with God. But as I gaze on the light of God laying in this manger, I hear the words, of Isaiah chapter 9, verse 2. And I just want to use these words as kind of our prayer to end this talk this morning. So I'm just going to ask you to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and think about the light of God and all the things the light of God would bring to you. Yes, the hard things, the exposure of our hearts and our darkness, but also the way the light of God brings to us the message in the manger that we will never be forsaken, we will never be abandoned, we will never be let go. And hear these words from Isaiah. The people who live in darkness have seen a great light. And on those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. Amen.